Good morning and welcome to the Breakfast News on Rajya Sabha TV. I'm Aishwarya Kapoor. Let us start with the headlines. Prime Minister to launch his government's second anniversary celebrations with a rally in Saharanpur. 200 events planned over a fortnight to mark the occasion. President Pranab Mukherjee given a warm welcome upon his arrival in Beijing. Will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping later today. Leaders gather for the G7 summit in Tokyo, focusing on world economy. The group to give a blueprint to spur global economic growth. And in our special focus on the drought situation in the country, we travel to Ajmer in Rajasthan, where soaring temperatures have worsened the crisis. Well, the NDA government completes 2 years in office today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi took oath as the Prime Minister on 26th of May 2014 after a historic win in the Lok Sabha elections. Now, starting today, the government will mark the anniversary with a series of events spread over a fortnight. Here are all the details.
Led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the NDA is getting ready to celebrate completion of its second year in office. The Prime Minister will address a public rally in Saharanpur in western UP today. The venue of the launch rally has been chosen keeping in mind the forthcoming elections in the state. Modi will follow this up with 4 more rallies in Balasore in Odisha and 1 each in Rajasthan, Karnataka and Meghalaya. The Prime Minister has also asked his ministerial colleagues to focus on carrying the initiatives taken by the government to the grassroots. About 33 teams, each comprising 1 cabinet minister, 1 MOS, a national office bearer, have been constituted to visit various cities from May 26th to June 15th for this purpose.
We have, by taking policy decisions, making processes transparent and online, by making standardization of many processes and also decentralizing our decision-making power. And we have reduced this time for environmental approvals from 600 days to 190 days, and we are going to reduce it further to 100 days.
कार्यकर्ताओं का सम्मेलन होगा, जो बेनिफिशरीज हैं विभिन्न योजनाओं के, उनके सम्मेलन हो सकते हैं, कुछ किसान सम्मेलन, कुछ युवा सम्मेलन, कुछ महिला सम्मेलन, इस तरह के कार्यक्रम करेंगे, प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंसेस होंगी.
Chairing a meeting of the Union Council of Ministers on Wednesday, the Prime Minister also took stock of the Aadhaar scheme and the direct benefit transfer scheme. A special celebration on May 28th will be held at India Gate in the national capital. At the event, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the Digital India campaign and rural electrification projects will be highlighted. But the opposition seems unimpressed with the plans and is choosing to highlight what it calls is the failure of the Modi government.
पिछले 2 साल में जो टूटे हुए वादों की कहानी है, जो अच्छे दिन के सब्ज बाग दिखाए थे प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी ने, और किस तरह लोगों में एक निराशा का वातावरण है, ये उसका उत्कृष्ट सम्मिश्रण है.
वो कहीं भी उनका रोड मैप भी नहीं दिखता, वो कैसे पूरी होंगी. जैसे गंगा की सफाई है, किसानों की उत्पादन के 1.5 गुना दाम देंगे, बेकार और बेरोजगार नौजवानों को 2 करोड़ रोजगार देंगे.
The government in turn plans to highlight the obstruction created by the Congress and other opposition parties inside Parliament, which has led to the delay in the passage of the Goods and Services Tax Bill. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And in other news, now in the coming months, buses across the country will be fitted with panic buttons, CCTVs and GPS as part of the pilot project launched by Union Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari on Wednesday. Now, the move is an effort to make public transport safer for women in the wake of rising crime and violence against them. Now, a notification to have such devices in all public transport buses across the country will be issued on 2nd of June. Transport vehicles with a seating capacity of over 23 passengers will mandatorily have CCTV cameras that will be connected to the Global Positioning System or the GPS and will be monitored by the local police control room. Now, under the project, Rajasthan is the first state to run 10 luxury and 10 ordinary roadways buses fitted with the emergency buttons as well as CCTV cameras.
अब हमने बसेस में CCTV जीपीएस सिस्टम जो व्हीकल ट्रैकिंग कर सकती है और तीसरा जो है विशेष रूप से हमने उसके ऊपर एक बटन की अरेंजमेंट की है, पैनिक बटन, जिसके कारण कोई भी ऐसी पैनिक घटना होती है तुरंत वो बटन दबा सकेंगे और इसकी जानकारी तुरंत कंट्रोल रूम और उसके साथ साथ वो जो इसका कंट्रोल रूम के साथ पुलिस के भी डिपार्टमेंट को जाएगी और तुरंत उसके ऊपर कार्रवाई होगी। और हम महिलाओं की सुरक्षा के बारे में संवेदनशील भी है, जागरूक भी है और इसीलिए भारत सरकार ने इसके लिए फंड उपलब्ध करा के दिया है। राजस्थान सरकार ने भी अपना आधा फंड दिया है और दोनों के साथ मिलकर इसकी शुरुआत हुई है। बाकी भी राज्यों ने इस योजना का फ़ायदा उठाकर इसको अमल में लाना चाहिए ताकि महिला सुरक्षा के लिए भविष्य में एक अहम कदम होगा।
And President Pranab Mukherjee arrived in Beijing yesterday evening with a warm welcome from the Chinese. With this, he starts the second leg of his 4-day visit to the country. Now, President Mukherjee was greeted by soldiers, officials and children as he landed in the Chinese capital from the industrial town of Guangzhou. He later met with the Chinese Vice President Li Yuanchao and discussed issues of mutual interest. At a reception hosted in his honor, the president said that India was keen to develop good ties with China.
As India pursues its primary goal of building modern India focused on peace, prosperity and sustainable development, we seek to engage within China in a spirit of equality and friendship. We seek to develop a matrix of cross-cutting contacts to enhance our mutual understanding and enrich our bilateral discourse.
News from Bihar now. An Lok Janshakti party leader was shot dead on Wednesday, prompting the party leaders to demand president's rule in the state. Now, Sudesh Paswan, a bloc president of LJP, was canvassing for his wife in the ongoing panchayat election. His cousin Sunil Paswan also sustained injuries in the shootout and died later in the hospital. Now, the killing, said to have been executed by Maoists, has spread panic in the Gaya district. LJP leader Chirag Paswan lashed out at the ruling Grand Alliance for what he called was the prevailing lawlessness in the state and said that those raising their voices were being murdered. He, along with other leaders, again pressed for their pending demand of a president's rule in the state.
ये अपने में दर्शाता है कि महागठबंधन के नेता सत्ता के नशे में इतने चूर हो गए हैं कि उनको अपने सामने विपक्ष के लोग या उनकी जिंदगी की, उनकी जान की अब कोई अहमियत ही नहीं दिख रही है। उन्होंने जिस तरीके से सुदेश पासवान की हत्या की गई, ये बहुत ही निंदनीय है, बहुत ही शर्मनाक। इससे ज्यादा मुझे नहीं लगता कि राजनीति का स्तर और गिर सकता है, जहां पर आप अगर लोक जनशक्ति पार्टी ने पहले भी प्रमुखता से इस बात की मांग की थी और अब सुदेश पासवान जी की हत्या के बाद पुनः हम लोग इसकी मांग करते हैं कि अब हमारे प्रदेश में जल्द से जल्द राष्ट्रपति शासन लागू कर दिया जाना चाहिए। राष्ट्र में, हमारे प्रदेश में कानून व्यवस्था पूरी तरीके से ध्वस्त हो चुकी है।
Moving on to some other news, and India offered an auction of 67 discovered oil and gas fields on Wednesday after a gap of over 4 years. Now, Petroleum Minister Dharmendra Pradhan announced that bidding for these fields will open on 15th of July and the last date will be 31st of October.
9 months after the Union Cabinet cleared the decision, the government on Wednesday announced auction of discovered oil and gas fields. Global bidders will seek claim to as many as 67 discoveries clubbed into 46 fields that hold resources worth nearly 70,000 crore. 28 discoveries are in Mumbai offshore, 14 in the Krishna-Godavari basin, while 10 are on the Assam shelf. The biggest discovery is the D18 in Mumbai offshore that holds 14.78 million tons oil reserves. Among gas discoveries, the largest is B9 in offshore Kutch Basin with 14.67 billion cubic meters.
ये देश की अर्थनीति में मददगार होगी और मैं आज जिस प्रकार से उत्साह लोगों के अंदर दिख रहा हूँ, मार्केट में दिख रहा हूँ, उसमें भारत की नए उद्यमी आएंगे और विश्व स्तर के भी इन्वेस्टर उसमें से आएंगे। भारत की बाजार की स्थिति को देख के भारत इन दिनों में एक निवेश की एश्योर्ड पॉइंट बन चुका है।
The government claimed these discoveries of ONGC and All India Limited in 2012-13 since the small size and price made production unviable. However, these state-run entities can bid to get back their discoveries. But experts feel Oil and gas price volatility and the high cost of production might dampen investor sentiment.
One is external to these fields, which is mostly on the oil and gas prices. There's so much of price uncertainty, price volatility, that investing in oil and gas anywhere is a question mark at this time. So that's a general challenge. On the specific challenges in this is that the fields are relatively small, right? So the prospectivity is also relatively small. But then you have to weigh it against the advantages which are also there. These are discovered fields, so to that extent the risks are way lower than any new prospecting.
Winners get a 20-year license with marketing and pricing freedom on a revenue sharing contract. The government also plans to conduct roadshows for global investors in places like Singapore, Houston, London, Dubai and Perth. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now to our continuing focus on the country's drought crisis. Now, soaring temperatures in Rajasthan have broken all records in Ajmer district of Rajasthan. Now, it has worsened the drought and the water crisis in the district, and women have been hit the hardest by the situation.
Housework and gathering cattle feed are the exclusive responsibility of the women of Hathipura village. But these days, arranging water for the household is an additional task that takes up their entire time. In Ajmer's Bandhanwada Panchayat, the water tank has been empty for the last 7 years. So are other water sources for the 300-odd villagers. These days, people are warned against going out in the overpowering heat, but the women have no option but to walk on broken, stone-filled, treeless roads to fetch water for their homes.
5 किलोमीटर से दूर से पानी आ रहा है और वहाँ का सड़क नहीं है, बिल्कुल डांडा का चारों नहीं है, बिल्कुल दुखी बनना को हो रहा हम उधर मोटियारा ना कोई दिक्कत ना आती है, लुग्गे ना दिक्कत आती, 4 हाथ ले लेर घर आता पानी ले लेर मटकी से.
Ajmer's rural areas are facing a huge water scarcity. The mercury is touching 50 degrees Celsius. Hot winds blow at night, but there is no respite for the women who are angry with the state of affairs.
वो सबसे ज़्यादा तो पानी की समस्या है. वो वहाँ पर रोड पे है 1.5 किलोमीटर पापू लेके आती है पानी. एक पास का मैं बड़े वो रोड अब आती है ना पहाड़ आदि बड़े बाप हाँ लेके बस बात कमाई कराती.
हमारे गांव में पानी बहुत दूर से आते हैं, वो भी थक जाते आते आते, वो 3-4 सांस लेके घर पे आते. मेरे गांव में रोड पक्की की नहीं है, आते है खुरंजा बिड़ाना है.
Some 9 lakh people are affected in the villages. Farming is in a state of crisis. Both water and fodder are in scarce supply. The Bandhanwada Panchayat is one of the biggest in the region, but despite efforts of its sarpanch, government assistance hasn't reached them.
हमने पंचायत समिति मीटिंग में अधिकारियों को सबको बता दिया, प्रधान जी को बता दिया और मंत्री महोदय को और अपने विधायक महोदय को बता दिया. उन्होंने बार बार हमारे को आश्वासन दे करके आगे से आगे इसमें क्रियान्वित कर रहे हैं, कार्य भी कर रहे हैं. अपना फाइल भेज रहे हैं, ऊपर काम हो रहा है. आपका 8 लाख की स्वीकृति भी आपने निकाल दी है, उसकी स्वीकृति आज दिन तक नहीं आई है.
Ajmer district has been declared drought affected. Despite the water crisis, there are few signs of institutional assistance. Women are the biggest victim of the negligence. Arvind Kumar Singh's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
And in Breakfast News, we'll take a very short break. We'll be back with more news and updates. Stay tuned.
Unless you propagate basic research in India, this country would not catch up with the rest of the world. If you want to come back, then come back as an Indian. If you want to be a foreigner in India, you will never succeed. If we have to import a technology from America, please import it 100%. But work on developing your own technology.
Watch Eureka with Professor Khurshid Iqbal Andrabi, Vice Chancellor, Kashmir University, only on Rajya Sabha TV.
Welcome back. News from the international arena, and leaders from 7 most advanced nations will kick off the G7 summit in Tokyo today with a creaky global economy in focus. Now, the summit is likely to give a blueprint to spur global economic growth through steps such as infrastructure spending. While China is not participating in the summit, it is likely to figure in the talks for the impact of its economic slowdown on the global economy, and its territorial claims in the South China Sea are also expected to remain in sharp focus. World leaders gathering in Japan ahead of a Group of 7 summit set to be dominated by the lackluster global economy. Heads of state and governments from the United States, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Canada and host Japan are meeting in Ise-shima, southwest of Tokyo. During the discussions on global economy, divisions are likely to remain over whether the world should spend or save its way out of the current situation, with Japan and Germany at odds on the issue.
今こそ G7 としてあらゆる状況に対応しうる、そして世界経済の持続的力強い成長に貢献していく明確な力強いメッセージを発出していく、そういうサミットにしていきたいと思っています。
Security has been tightened across the region, with thousands of extra police personnel deployed to patrol train stations and ferry terminals and to direct traffic on the usually quiet roads during the 2-day meeting.
車で走っていて、すごく今まで本当に、5分とか10分できたところが、結構時間かかってしまって、はい。警察官僚がめちゃくちゃ多いから、そこら中に皆さん立っていただいて、治安は良くなったね、確かに。
While the world's second largest economy, China, is conspicuous in its absence from the meeting, it looks set to loom large over discussions. Japan and the US are likely to address Beijing's territorial assertiveness in the South China Sea.
中方呢，在南海所进行的活动完全是正当合法、无可非议的。中国完全有权、必须，而且呢，也能够维护自己在南海地区的正当的权益，不再受到侵害。
Apart from the creaky global economy, issues like terrorism, refugees, and a possible Brexit headlines G7's packed agenda. On the sidelines of the summit, US President Barack Obama will visit the atomic-bombed city of Hiroshima on Friday, becoming the first sitting US leader to travel to the site of the world's first nuclear attack in 1945. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. News from the US now, and the Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump wasted no time in taking aim at his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton and another prominent Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren, calling them crooked to the core. Now, his verbal attack in California came the same day as an official report found that the former Secretary of State had not sought permission to conduct official business on her personal email account. With his first trip to the Golden State in a few weeks, Donald Trump wasted no time on Wednesday digging into the news about Hillary Clinton's emails.
She's as crooked as they come. She had a little bad news today, as you know, from some reports came down weren't so good, but not so good. The Inspector General's report, not good. But I want to run against Hillary, I just want to run against her. Look, I don't know if you're going to be able to. It could be we're going to run against crazy Bernie. That could be.
According to the State Department's Inspector General, Clinton and some of her predecessors violated the government policies on email use and records retention.
Record keeping. We could have done a better job at preserving emails and records of secretaries of state and their senior staff going back, frankly, several administrations, so back to before Secretary Clinton. We recognize that.
The long-awaited report was highly critical of Clinton's use of a server in her home and contradicted her repeated assertion that the server was allowed and that no permission was needed.
I will also make the point that, the fact that she turned over some, 52,000 pages of her emails, and I think the OIG recognized that, in some ways mitigated those past preservation problems.
Clinton and other Democrats have played down the inquiries, saying her use of email was consistent with her predecessors and that political opponents were misrepresenting the facts.
Looking back, it would have been better if I'd simply used a second email account and carried a second phone, but at the time, this didn't seem like an issue.
Secretary Clinton did was consistent with other secretaries of state have done, including Colin Powell. The report itself references long-standing systemic weaknesses that go well beyond the tenure of any Secretary of State.
Meanwhile, some 100 people staged a boisterous but largely peaceful demonstration outside a Southern California rally by Trump before police moved in and arrested 8 people. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
News from the Middle East, and Iraqi forces are edging closer to Fallujah, fighting for the control of the outlying villages and towns. Now, with thousands still trapped inside the town, a massive attempt to expel some 800 to 1,000 Islamic State fighters continues.
Iraqi security forces and police have made early successes after launching a major offensive against the Islamic State to retake control of Fallujah, a key Islamic State stronghold west of Baghdad. Iraqi forces captured Garma, a major supply line for the IS along the northeastern edge of the town.
هذه المنطقة كان عندهم خط صيد وانكسر خط الصيد فبات العدو يتخذ لاذ بالفرار حاليا يستخدم فقط الهاونات والقنص لمنع التقدم.
With roadside bombs and booby traps having been cleared, the troops have set up barracks in the recaptured areas on the east front and are rooting out small pockets of resistance as they push towards the city centre.
اليوم التقدم على منطقة السجر اللي هي الخاصرة الأخيرة لقطع الإمداد بين الفلوجة والقرمة. المنطقة هي منطقة جدا حيوية ومهمة.
The forces are also evacuating residents as the offensive continues. The IS has reportedly been stopping residents from fleeing and using them as human shields. As the battle rages on, an estimated 50,000 residents may still be trapped inside the town. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And for more international news, here is the World Wrap. The Sri Lankan government has decided to set up an office on missing persons, one of the 4 mechanisms proposed to deal with the civil war-related grievances. The office will not engage in prosecutions. However, it will have the power to investigate the fate of missing persons and the circumstances related to the disappearance and communicating the status to the relatives of the missing persons. Belgian federal prosecutors carried out a series of raids and have charged 4 people with participation in a terrorist group. The authorities said that the 4 were suspected of recruiting people to fight in Libya and Syria and that some of them may have planned to join Islamic State. The names of the people have not been disclosed. Police action comes 2 months after deadly bombings in Brussels that killed 32 people on 22nd of March. Hundreds of protesters gathered outside Venezuela's Supreme Court in Caracas on Wednesday in a nationwide rally demanding a recall referendum to end President Nicolas Maduro's socialist rule. But the ruling party's officials say that there is no time to organize a vote in 2016. Earlier this month, Maduro declared a 60-day state of emergency, widening his powers to sidestep the legislature, intervene in the economy and control the streets. Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron and Finance Minister George Osborne have issued dire economic warnings if the country votes to leave the EU in a referendum in 1 month's time. They have warned earlier that households would be hurt by a fall in the value of their homes and face costlier foreign holidays if they voted out. And now a look at all the sports stories. Here is the sports beat. Brazilian investigators have expanded their probe into possible corruption around the staging of the Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro this August to include all venues and services financed with federal funds. Federal investigators have previously focused on legacy modernization projects not directly tied to the Games, but this newly disclosed probe includes Olympic Park and Drought area where Olympic venues are located. More than 90,000 police, soldiers and private security agents will be deployed across France to ensure safety for the Euro 2016 soccer tournament. The month-long tournament opens across France on 10th of June, with the state of emergency still in force after the attacks last November that killed 130 people in Paris. Rafael Benitez has signed a 3-year contract to stay on as Newcastle United manager after agreeing to lead their quest for an immediate return to the Premier League. Benitez, who began last season in charge of Real Madrid, was hired by Newcastle in March to try to extricate them from the relegation zone, a fate he just failed to achieve. Arsenal have reached an agreement to sign Switzerland midfielder Granit Xhaka from Borussia on a long-term contract for an undisclosed fee. The 23-year-old, who has 41 caps, has played 36 times for the Bundesliga club and captained them to the 4th place last season. That's all in this edition of news. Thanks so much for your time.